pledge
pledge
allegiance
allegiance
to the
to the
flag
flag
of the
of
United
the
States
United States of America
America,
and to the
and to the
republic
republic for which it stands,
stands
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
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 indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty
and
and
justice for all.
for all.
Thank you, Hugo. All right, special presentation, WCDC audit presentation. Dr. Vicky Barber.
Israel, could I get a motion for the adoption of the agenda?
Okay, sorry about that.
I'll motion.
Thank you, Joanne.
Second?
Roger, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank
All
you.
right, now we go to the special presentation.
Let me see. I don't see Dr. Barber yet.
All right, we'll come back to that.
Okay.
From the public? Do we have any comments from the public?
Let me check one more time. We have a public comment document and we have not had any input on that yet.
All right, thank you. Let us know if anything pops up, Wendy.
Okay.
From the board, Bill, would you like to start?
Was that me, Israel? I missed it.
Yes, Neil, go ahead.
Good. A thank you to everybody in these difficult times and recognition. These are indeed difficult times. Very briefly, I know that our administration is working hard, the board's working hard, the counseling staff is working hard, everybody's working hard. And I think I wanted to say, just take a moment out to acknowledge our teachers. And to do that, I came across a very quick verse I'd like to read. And it's a guy by a gentleman named Kevin William Huff. And it goes like this: thank you for inspiring a love of knowledge and truth as you light the path which leads our youth. For our future brightens with each lesson you teach, each smile you lengthen, each goal you help reach. For the dawn of each poet, each philosopher and king begins with a teacher and the wisdom they bring. Thank you, teachers, for all you're doing in this really difficult time. That's it for
Thank
me.
you, Neil. Roger?
Yes, thank you, Israel. I wanted to also share just a couple of brief comments. I wanted to thank all of our administrators, our teachers, for all the good work they're doing with our students. And in addition, also recognizing the challenges that our students themselves are facing with a very different way of learning. And I hope that a lot of great positive learning is going on with them, that they're embracing the new way or the new challenge. Who knows? It might be a different way of teaching as we move into the future as well. Hopefully everything can resume back to normal, if that's the proper word to use. But I wanted to share that with everyone as well, and thank our students for braving the new situation and wishing them the very best in their learning. That's all for me, Israel. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Joanne?
Sure, thank you. I'd like to, I guess, just echo and agree with what Neil said, what Roger said, and just let our community know and our staff know how much we appreciate everybody's courage and dedication to proceed. Many of us are, those of us on the board are working at our regular jobs, and we're grateful to be doing that. We don't know what impact this is having on our community as a whole. As a whole, we know that that's affecting education, how it's affecting them in other ways, both emotionally as well as physically, financially, all the ways you want to look at it. So offer courage to everyone and gratitude, being a team, because that's what we are. And it's as a team, that we'll come through this. So thanks to everyone for that. That's all.
Thank you, Joanne. Nelson? Nelson, you're muted.
Sorry about that, Israel. I don't have any comments. I think Joanne said it well. These are unprecedented times, and obviously very difficult times for many of us. And I agree. We try to remain positive and optimistic and pull through this together. And that's really all I have, Israel.
Thank you, Nelson. On my behalf, I also want to make sure that the staff, teachers, everyone has our gratitude for the efforts being made. I want to remind everyone to take care of yourself, both physically and mentally. This is a tough time to do so, but you need to be aware of finding some ways to get off the subject, right, and relax a little bit and change your thought process so that we don't get fixated on the negative. So, you know, I will say that in walking the neighborhood, I've never seen more families together, playing together, and there's some positives on this, and we just got to look for them. There's a lot of good things happening. So thank you, everybody. I'm gonna, before I move on to the chief business official, I believe Ms. Barber is on now, so we'd like to go ahead and do the special presentation. Did I lose you?
Can you hear me now?
Sorry.
Here.
I was
Now we can
muted.
hear you.
I was talking. I'm sorry. I was gonna. I just wanted to introduce Dr. Barber. We actually asked Dr. Barber to do a study on special education a couple years ago, and she did a real phenomenal job with her team on our special education analysis and study. And coming from Arizona, we wanted to bring her back to do a study on our CDC program and our preschool, as we looked at some budget issues with our preschool and our CDC. So Dr. Barber brought in a team of experts and was able to do a study for us. So she's here today to provide recommendations, suggestions, commendations to our team so we can move forward through the process of improving our CDC and preschool program. Dr. Barber, I'll leave it to you.
All right, it's great. And it is great to be here with you. So it's amazing what technology has been able to do. And again, my congratulations to you for everything that you're doing. And as you mentioned, your staff has done a remarkable job. So it's a difficult time for all schools throughout the nation, but certainly in terms of in California. So thank you for letting me join you. And I think that Wendy is right on it. So we have a PowerPoint presentation that we thought might be easier to be able to navigate and talk through. As Dr. Silvers mentioned, we did an independent evaluation of your child development and before and after school programs. I had several folks that worked with me, David Toston, who is actually the current associate superintendent of El Dorado County, working with special education and special ed preschool programs. Bob Stepanovich, who is the fiscal manager for a number of programs with the El Dorado County Office of Education, and Kay Caldwell, who had previously been executive director of child development programs. As well as she had run before and after school programs. So she was a great asset also to be able to join us. So I'm going to just continue through, but please ask questions at any point. We're going to focus primarily on the commendations and recommendations that we offered in the report, but there is an extensive report that we provided, and so there's much more detail there. But if there's any questions that the board or staff would like me to respond to, I would be happy to at any point. And I want to certainly begin by expressing my appreciation and commendations to the board and to the superintendent and his staff. Certainly to Kathy Waller, who was a tremendous asset and very, very helpful as we went through the study and being able to get us just an immense amount of documentation that we asked for. And so she was invaluable in terms of being able to make all of that happen. So again, my personal appreciation to her. And I want to talk for just a moment in terms of just kind of an overview. And I just want to make sure that I acknowledge your leadership, which is focused on improving services for all students and families. As I mentioned, Kathy and many members of your staff, your business office, your HR, all divisions were responsive to many requests that we had for information and data. And it's obvious that you're interested in continuous improvement and that you're receptive to ideas for improving outcomes for all your students. Our study design was to essentially conduct a review. We looked at a large number of documents, but we also wanted to actually be on site. So we had 4 members of our team that were on site for 3 days. And so I'm going to hold on the next slide for just a moment if we can. And we visited all 3 of your sites that operate either the preschool programs or your before and after school programs, including Cabrillo, Anza, and Burnett. We conducted focus groups with a number of different stakeholders, with your principals, with your TK and kindergarten teachers, with your CDC staff, including both preschool and before and after school, your CDC directors, your special education preschool staff, your business office, and parents. And throughout, we found a number of things that were going very, very well. And so we want to recognize those things that are happening very well in Weisburn. So talking first of all about the overarching trends that we found, as I mentioned, we certainly want to commend the superintendent and board for undertaking the study. It is obvious that you have a highly qualified staff, and that staff was heralded by all administrators as being dedicated, knowledgeable, and committed to high standards. So your principals, your administrative staff all spoke to what outstanding teaching staff and support staff that you have. You also have a very strong mission statement and your LCAP that recognizes the priority of serving all students. And it was focused on academic, social, and physical needs of the whole child. And that is, I think, has proven to help establish a very strong positive culture being established within the district. So then talking about commendations and student outcomes on our next slide. You have certainly a wide range of programs in areas of preschool and for before and after school care. And there's tremendous research on both areas. The preschool research goes back to the 1960s and 70s in identifying why it's so important that we provide preschool education and what those outcomes were. In the study, we detail a number of those results. We talk about that there's enormous benefits in terms of having quality preschools available, including program benefits of more kids graduating from high school, of having less likely to be teen parents, having less adjudication for students, less students that are going to be in terms of welfare in later life. And there's even research that shows that for every dollar we spend, that we're going to yield about a $17 return for those in terms of putting the money into preschool and doing that early education effort. There's similar research findings when we talk about before and after school care, that before and after school not only helps the child learn, but also helps us close that achievement gap that we're all seeking. And moving forward toward improved academic performance, improved school attendance, and certainly supporting our families in our community when they have working parents. So that wide range of programs is a tremendous area that we really want to speak to in terms of recognizing and acknowledging and commending the district. You took over a program that was successful in the private sector in 2013. The Rainbow River program, and transferred that, and that shows tremendous creativity in terms of making that happen. And we also noted you have strong achievement for all your students, but also specifically with respect to your students with disabilities, and you exceed in both English language arts and math counties numbers as well as statewide numbers. So then talking about the improvement efforts, and the slide that's up now, looking at, you have attempted to increase transparency by putting in place a school mint program and a dashboard that allows parents to track their status regarding the admission process. We heard concerns from parents throughout that they weren't sure as to where they were on that admission process. And the School Mint program has been helpful in terms of helping to mitigate that. You're also pursuing a standardized methodology for assessing students for readiness for TK and kindergarten, and moving forward to implement a consistent methodology at your elementary schools for the future. So those are great things. So then let's talk about commendations with the staff on the next slide. And in that slide, we talk about your staff is certainly interested and extending efforts to collaborate between special ed and general ed for both the preschool programs and the before and after school programs, and staff are committed to that. Your directors, your CDC directors, are committed for their awareness of standards and their efforts to review performance and achievement of students coming from their programs, and using data to be able to achieve that. And certainly principals noted that they have done lots of efforts to try and include preschool programs by doing walkthroughs of classes and attempting to include those programs in their daily operations. And that's, we want to herald that, because whenever we talk about trying to have one coherent system, we want to ensure that we don't have any of our programs being siloed or being in any way left out or not included within the mainstream. So principals are certainly committed on that. So specifically efforts and commending your before and after school staff on the next slide. The before and after school staff are doing a great job on ensuring that kids complete their homework assignments during the time that they're in the program. It's probably the #1 commendation that we hear from parents that are so thrilled to not have to do that battle at home for kids that are coming home late, and parents that are coming home from working and not having to then sit down at the kitchen table and try to get homework done. And so it's a great service that's being provided, and again, they noted their appreciation for that. And the district should be certainly commended for attempting to eliminate wait lists by expanding services. And you have tried to go after that in current years, certainly for before and after school, but also for preschool. Then talking about preschool, accommodations for your preschool classrooms. The full inclusion classroom that you offer is one of the best practices. It's one of the things that we recommended within the statewide special education task force report, that we look at how we can model inclusion of students with disabilities. And Weisburn has done that for a long period of time. Your staff should be commended for taking that on and making that happen. Certainly Mary Ring and Kathy Waller are both instrumental in making that occur. And then the range of the preschool programs, not only do you have a full inclusion classroom, but you also include students with disabilities in your other preschool classrooms. Those are going to be students that would require just related services like speech and language instruction, and again, allowing for that maximum interaction between students with disabilities and their non-disabled peers is noteworthy. So we then mentioned commendations with parents, and your parents in your community are certainly to be lauded. On the next slide, that they completed a parent survey. We had almost 450 parents in the district that completed a parent survey. That's outstanding in terms of the numbers and having that many folks that are interested. And beyond that, you had about 60 parents that came out to meet with us in focus groups and to sit down with us personally with staff at your school sites in afternoons or evenings to talk through with us their specific input and their perspective as to how things were going. So those are the things that we wanted to particularly highlight to you as commendations and things that you should take great pride in that the Weisburn district has accomplished. As in every report, you would expect us to also come in with some recommendations. And so when we look at moving forward, we want to look at continuous improvement. And so on the next slide and then the slide after, I'm going to start talking about what those recommendations are that we would suggest that you take a look at. So on the overarching recommendations, we first of all would suggest that you separate the two programs. Right now, the CDC refers to not only your preschool classes, but it also refers to your before and after school. And it would appear, or at least we would suggest that you consider establishing individual identities for both those programs. The designation of CDC is often referenced only with respect to a preschool program. When you think about a child development center or child development programs, that generally refers to a before 5 designation in terms of what we're looking at. So it's somewhat confusing when we use that designation for also the before and after school care. And so establishing a separate name for your before and after school program may be helpful, and coming up with some kind of acronym that is personal to Wiseburn that may be helpful in terms of giving that some greater awareness or visibility within the district. Then looking at staffing and organizational recommendations. We first of all would suggest, if you look at what you've done at Dana, Dana's site principal is responsible for that before and after school program. We think you may want to consider doing that at your other sites also, at Burnett and Anza and Cabrillo. And you may want to add an account clerk to support to assist with the collection of parent fees in terms of doing that. And we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. Looking at, if you were to do that, if you were to put that direct supervision under the respective school principal, you may also want to consider having a lead instructor within your before and after school program at each site to assist with the oversight, because there'll be times that program's in operation that a school principal wouldn't normally be on site, and you'll want to have someone that would have the responsibility and the authority to have the oversight. And then to create a certificated administrative position to oversee both programs. And our recommendation for certificated in this instance is that as we look further in the recommendations coming on the next few slides, is really talking about the collaboration between these programs and the general education. And to achieve that, to take a look at making sure that we have that linkage, it's going to take someone who has an administrative credential that can therefore have the credibility with your certificated staff, rather than a classified classified individual. So integrating the vision and the shared expectations for both programs into your district strategic plan. I think you currently have underway an effort to look at your strategic plan. So this would be very timely in terms of making sure that if you were to do these kind of staffing and organizational changes, making sure that that's integrated within that newly developed strategic plan. Then talking about interdistrict permits, you have a positive variance between your numbers of students who are coming into the district versus those that are leaving. At the same time, we really want to know under what circumstances or what's the rationale for any of our parents that are wanting to leave the Wiseburn district. So whether it's a short survey or exit interview or something online, some way in which we're actually doing a follow-up to know from all parents that are leaving, that are asking for interdistricts to leave, what's happening. And then looking at aggregating and reviewing that data at the cabinet level to see if there's any trends and whether we can mitigate that in any way as to why any parent is in fact seeking an interdistrict permit to leave. So then I want to move to the before and after school recommendations specifically. You have as a goal, and we would certainly support that, to eliminate wait list for your before and after school care program. Your Cabrillo and Burnett sites both have wait lists currently for before and after school care. I should say currently as of February. At this point in time, things are in quite flux in terms of the other issues that we're dealing with. But and then looking at in terms of expanding the program to have it open and in operation at the same time that businesses are within your area. It makes it much more difficult for families when they still have to go to work. If we have two parents and both are working, or we have a single parent family, in any instance where that parent is having to go to work and they've lost any childcare services, that becomes much more difficult for them. So looking at, can we expand and offer before and after school or in place of school programs at times when school is not necessarily open. And looking at making sure that families know in a very advantageous time frame as to whether or not their child has been admitted into the program. Even though you've gone with school mint, there still is some confusion in terms of actually, where am I on the wait list? Because a wait list in terms of both the before and after and the preschool is not it's not a one-to-one kind of perspective in terms of how that works. A parent can be listed as being number one on the waiting list and still have someone after them being able to get into the program before they do, because it may be a sibling. It may be a particular age range or grade level that you're looking for, that you've got an opening in. So there's lots of parameters that are beyond what the school mint is able to accommodate or to explain to parents. So making sure that we can in fact explain to parents how that works, but also giving them a much more positive time frame as to when they're going to know whether or not their child's admitted. And then looking at when we go to try to eliminate wait list, making sure that we're increasing the utilization of all facilities, everything we've got, whether it's multi-purpose rooms, music rooms, libraries, whatever it is, everything that's out there on our school sites, including adjoining campus space, making sure that we have utilized that to the best of our ability to meet families' needs and kids that are wanting to, in fact, participate in our before and after school care program. So the financial considerations on the next slide. We certainly want to be cost effective and competitive. And one of the major ways that we need to do that is in terms of looking at our staff student ratios. All programs, staffing is going to be the number one cost that's going to be related to any program operation. And currently you're operating at 1 to 12 or 1 to 14. We had different ratios depending on who we talked to. What CDC directors thought, what your business office thought, what your HR department thought, those numbers all varied as to what the current ratio was in before and after school care programs. We would suggest that you actually look at increasing that to a 1 to 18, or even with some flexibility to go to a 1 to 20. When you think about what we expect our teachers to do, we're expecting our teachers to improve student achievement, and they're going to be operating with classrooms of 25 to 1, sometimes 30, whatever. So it doesn't seem unreasonable to expect our before and after school care programs to also be increasing to at least a 1 to 18 ratio. We also would suggest that rather than having individual grade levels, that you look at blending some of your classrooms. Right now you staff your before and after school care with essentially by grade level. And because kids don't come in neat packages of 14 first graders and 14 second graders, we need to take a look at doing some blending in order to be able to maximize that performance. We also suggested that you do look at your early late schedule structure as to how it's contributing to some of your fiscal challenges with the program. We didn't suggest that you did that immediately, because you are doing an extensive study to look at the research, to look at what the impact would be. But if you think about the impact of this on your before and after school program, you basically have 50% of your population of your K through 3s that are available an hour before school starts for the rest of the kids. 1 hour later, the demand for that program can go up significantly, particularly for your kindergartners. So there's no question there's some impact there, and that's why we suggested that you at least might want to consider looking at for next year, for this coming year, looking at a consistent start and end time for third graders for the next school year, and seeing how that works, and they'll give you some information about any other unintended consequences that might come up. So then continuing on in terms of looking at communication issues for the before and after school. The website, we would suggest that it needs to be revised so that it's a little bit more user-friendly to access the information regarding your before and after school program. It's difficult to find where that information is on the website. It's not an icon as a particular department on the first page as I log into your website. And so wanting to make sure that that's information is easily accessible would be important. Then looking at holding some informational meetings at appropriate times during the year to walk parents through the whole process for applying and explaining their options as to how this is going to work. Parents are relying upon parents currently, and that's great. And they're doing a good job, but it would be helpful to have the expert being the district that's available to answer any questions. And that will help also increase transparency, particularly in terms of explaining those parameters that I mentioned before, that there's other factors that play into whether or not a parent is actually going to have their child admitted. And then talking about collaboration. I mentioned before in terms of commending your principals that in fact that they do some walkthroughs, wanting to make sure that that's consistently done and that all programs, whether it's before and after school or preschool, are included in that. And encouraging staff to visit some general ed classrooms and meet with teachers at least once a year to discuss how they can support general ed. You know, as we put resources into before and after school care, we really want our general education program to be extended into that before and after school care program. We want to support the academics, the social, the emotional, all the different concepts that we're teaching within our classrooms, and have that done also within before and after. We know that we can make a much bigger impact if in fact we've supported. So for example, we might have our before and after school staff working on spelling lists that the general ed teacher is working on, or making sure that they're doing something in the geography and history area or social studies area, or that they're doing math facts on the playground type of thing. There's lots of ways that we can incorporate that into a fun, engaging, very robust type of program, but they can't do that if they're not clearly aware of what the standards are and what actually that general ed teacher is trying to impart in terms of knowledge and information. And so providing the training to make sure that that is done, and having an annual meeting with our staff, with the principals, and perhaps some general ed representatives also, to make sure that we have in fact dealt with any issues that are creating a perception of the program being separate or siloed in any way. Lots of times there's things that we're not even aware of that staff may have a perception of, that they're not being included. And so if we can just have that annual meeting to talk through any of the issues, we can set those aside. So now I want to switch to talk about preschool. And again, the same kind of goals that we start with, making sure that there's no waiting list if at all possible. But the second one is looking at how we can expand the program to include a full day option. We heard from over 80 parents when we look at the parent survey, and in terms of the interviews that we conducted, that the amount of time that Weisburn was able to offer a preschool program was a significant factor for them in deciding whether or not they could stay in the district or they needed to go to another district. Another district that offered a longer program or a full day program. The same kind of things that we heard before in terms of before and after school care is also though making sure that parents can know very early whether or not their kids are included. And you see that third bullet, if we can't guarantee access to all, then establishing a priority for 4-year-olds to be admitted into the program and then 3-year-olds would make sense. The priority for the district has to be that kids are ready for learning when they enter either TK or kindergarten. So recognizing if that's our priority, that's what the district gets out of making sure that we provide preschool programs that are quality, then it makes sense that 4-year-olds are the first priority for us in terms of giving them access to the curriculum and making sure that we've done everything we can to ensure that they're ready for learning. And then as we mentioned for the before and after school care is also consider any other facilities, including whether or not a centralized facility could be available for our preschool programs. If we could do that and move some of those programs off your other elementary sites, that also then makes more facilities available for your before and after school care. So it could help you in terms of both programs in being able to move in that direction. So then we talk about full inclusion, which as I mentioned before, we certainly commend the district for offering. It is important to recognize that your special education staff for your preschool program is certificated. Your general education staff for the preschool level or grade levels is classified. They have different reporting requirements. Your special ed people report to the principals, your general ed people report to a CDC director. So making sure that we have established some meetings to be able to develop some collaboration guidelines. There is very different pressures and different perspectives from both sides of that staff, and wanting to address that in the future would be helpful in terms of having some joint meetings. Communicating the continuum of offerings of curriculum, types of students, you may want to even look at expanding or changing some of your programs to have one full inclusion classroom that would be focused on moderate to more intensive needs with perhaps fewer students with disabilities. Maybe the second full inclusion classroom would have more of the mild disabled students in terms of meeting their needs. And so wanting to make sure that you've had that conversation, looked at how can I expand that and make sure that that's very visible and known. In terms of communication, making sure that our department meetings, that our PLCs, our guiding coalitions, all of those are in concert, and that preschool programs, both in terms of what we offer on the general ed side as well as on special ed side, are included within that conversation. And in making sure that we specifically have professional development for instructional assistants that would facilitate student independence. We have a number of instructional assistants that are providing one-on-one instruction for students that have that indicated in their IEPs, but wanting to make sure that we have done everything we can to foster that independence so that we get away from that one-on-one kind of service, which is not generally where we want to be for kids' well-being. Because I think I shared with the board when we talked about the special ed study a couple years ago that if I have one-on-one's aides, if there's a one-on-one aide assigned to me as being in the classroom, other students talk to the aide, they don't talk to me. And that's not really in terms of the full inclusion of what we want to see. And then finally, establishing some clear written expectations and consistent accountabilities for schedules, responsibilities, and workloads. This would help us in terms of both general ed and special ed staff think that the other side has many more advantages than they do. So there's different perceptions of what the workload is. It's almost like the grass is always greener on the other side. So wanting to address that straight on and in terms of taking a look at that. So We want to, in terms of our full inclusion on the next slide, we want to establish some means for some regular feedback. We want to actually also adopt some goals as to how we can communicate in writing with all employees, along with that organizational structure and chain of command. And this goes back to the recommendation that we noted earlier, that you had one certificated employee administrator that would be actually responsible for the program, and all of our preschool, whether they were preschool special ed or preschool general ed, would be reporting to that one consistent administrator. And then looking at our financial considerations. We clearly want to be cost effective and competitive with other operators. And so we want to make sure that our staff ratios are operated in concert with licensing requirements of 1 teacher to 24 children and a pupil adult ratio of 1 to 8. We found instances where we felt like you were below that ratio, and there's actually where you have in your Cabrillo afternoon program, you actually have open slots available. And so when you're looking at wanting to financially get into a more balanced position, those are areas that we specifically want to take a look at. When you look at the preschool pricing comparison that's detailed in the report, it's not that you are so much higher in terms of your daily rate. The challenge is that for your daily rate, you're operating less hours than your other competitors are, other school districts around you. So if you look at, you're operating at 3.5 hours, the average for districts around you is 4.75, if I don't include your numbers in that. So that's where we see the major difference in terms of wanting to respond. So preschool program recommendations then on the next slide, the communication issues are the same as what we noted for before and after school care, looking at your website, looking at informational meetings, looking at increasing transparency and having an annual meeting to try and create the perception of the program being part of our entire operation. And then looking at collaboration between preschool on the next slide and general education staff. Again, as we mentioned before, having principals consistently include the preschool classrooms when they walk through, encouraging staff to visit a TK and K classroom and to meet with the teacher to look at how we can make sure that we are in fact supporting and improving readiness for our students entering TK and kindergarten. Then employing a consistent assessment tool. We mentioned on the commendations that you're moving in this direction. We would definitely reinforce that and want to make sure that you have a protocol for measuring school readiness of students entering kindergarten, and that those results are aggregated, and that you are in fact going to look and review those results with your preschool, your TK, and your K teachers on a consistent basis. We don't change what we don't know. So we need to have that data that we can look at, and it needs to be consistent across all sites. And then we look at in terms of making sure your professional development, that you're looking at responding to any areas where the data is showing that we don't have the results that we want to see. We mentioned specifically also consider inviting other preschool providers to that PD, professional development, that PD that you're operating. The reason for that, again, is that Wiseburn benefits when kids come into school ready to learn. Whether they've come from, Mary Jo's preschool program down the street, or ABC, or your own programs that you're providing. We want to have all preschool programs in the area to be quality programs where kids are going to come into your TK and kindergarten programs ready to learn with those readiness skills intact. So having them included within your training is beneficial to the district. So then financial and HR recommendations. Again, on the next slide, we want to make sure that you look at how we can make our programs sustainable and cost effective. And so the district's not in a position of subsidizing. Over the last several years, you have been subsidizing these programs. Now, first of all, your data is aggregated for your whole CDC. So I can't differentiate whether or not the preschool or the before and after school care is exactly where the shortfall is coming. But when I look at what's happening, if I go back to the 2014-15 school year, you had about a 240,000 fund balance for this program, a beginning fund balance. You started then, that year you had a subsidy of about 5,000, the next year's 20,000, and then we went over 100,000, and last year we were at about 65,000, which would have actually been higher except for some one-time adjustments that you were making. So we really want to take a look at, again, separating the two programs so that I can get a better idea as to where the cost overruns are happening in terms of what I need to do. And secondly, I want to then take a look at staffing in both of these programs to be able to get them into a sustainable position. We mentioned taking a look at a third party, whether or not that would be more cost effective. We don't really think that that's the direction you're going to want to go, but we didn't want to ignore that as a potential or as something that you might want to take a look at. So then looking at program budgeting and further recommendations in the financial and human resources area. We mentioned separating the programs, implementing time accounting for staff who span both programs and proportionally allocating their cost, looking at program budgets in conjunction with program management. So having a budget to actual report that you're going to look at monthly between your business office and your school principals for the before and after, and your special ed or your certificated manager to really take a look at where are we in respect to analyzing and looking at income to expense variance. The before and after school program, in the same way as we talked about for preschool, again, you are at about the top of the equation when I look at comparison to districts around you on their before and after school care. So there's not going to be there's not going to be an issue in terms of, can I increase my revenue? Can I raise fees? That in all likelihood is not going to be a reasonable option for you to look at, because around you, districts are providing it at your cost or even lower. So in order to get into line, the only option is in terms of containing cost and looking at how can I do that. So on the next slide, we talk about that cost containment. And we talked about, first of all, reorganizing administration of the programs with one central certificated administrator, some lead instructors, and looking at whether or not you need some account clerk assistance in terms of collecting parent fees, looking at higher adult to student ratios for your before and after school care program, and making sure on your preschool that you're operating at licensing requirements. Implement position control to specifically track and maintain those ratios, and then make sure that your payroll allocations match up with that. And then evaluating some cost benefit options for reducing food costs. Can I actually, do this in concert with the district? Can I do some in-house nutrition? Can I look at vendor cost comparisons, or maybe even asking for parents to provide some nutrition so that I can reduce those costs and get that into a better position. And then finally, taking a look at, on the last slide, the tuition and fee collections. We would suggest that you look at an affordable online payment solution, and that you discontinue or strongly discourage any collection of checks or cash at school sites. Make sure that if we do have to continue that for any reason, that we in fact put in place 2 employees to utilize in the verification of payments, so that we have best practices and the kind of internal controls that we would want to see. This has grown to be a relatively large program. You're looking at income, in terms of the 2018-19 year, we were projecting to have over between preschool and your before and after school, care $2 million coming in. So this is a program that is worthy of really taking a look at those internal controls and making sure that we've got in place an internal control system that's going to make a lot of sense. And then you have been offering some discounts, and that makes sense. But again, we would want to make sure that there's a clear discount policy, that when the reason for the discount has discontinued, if it's a discount because of a sibling and the older sibling has left us for some reason, then we shouldn't continue to offer a discount for a second child when there's not a second child involved. And if your programs can improve to the place financially that you could take this, you may want to consider a priority and a discount being offered to district employees, and particularly to classified staff. You know, everyone who offers these kinds of programs has difficulty holding classified staff because they're not 8-hour-a-day programs for the most part. They're not necessarily qualifying for benefits often. So in both the preschool and the before and after school program, this may be a perk that may help us to hold some staff in the future that would make it worthwhile to take a look at that as a potential discount. So detailed information that I've tried to go through rapidly for you because I am aware of your agenda that you need to do this evening. But I did want to just close again with offering our congratulations and applauding you for the effort that you have done to serve all students, and the commitment that you have put, not only in terms of your mission statement and the goals that you have set out, but also in terms of always looking at how you can continuously improve to make sure you're meeting the needs of all your students. So it was a real pleasure working with all of your staff. And if there's any questions or any areas that I could articulate further, I'd be happy to. I'm not hearing, I think someone's speaking, but I'm not hearing that.
I'm sorry about that. Dr. Barber, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Very thorough, and we have a lot to dive into here. Is there any quick questions from the board before we move on?
Just a thank you. Well done.
Yeah, thank you.
Dr. Barber, I also wanted to thank you. I think I certainly think you made some great recommendations with regards to the program. I do like the point about separating the CDC and the before and after school program. One question, not necessarily for now, but maybe for a later time, is I'd like to get a little further clarification on your study in comparing our before after school program specifically to other nearby districts, because I am very concerned about how we compete with those other districts. And I do understand that some nearby districts have entered into some agreements with like Parks and Recs departments that really offset, and they may be very difficult to compete with. So that would be for a further time to discuss, but I'd like to get a little bit more information with regards to that.
Surely. And I will mention there's a detailed chart included within the report that goes through what El Segundo, Manhattan Beach, Redondo, Culver City, and the averages, what they have been charging. And great credit goes to your business office who put together the vast majority of this data in terms of looking at it. So I know that they will be prepared, but I'd be happy to assist in any way I could.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Barber. All right, we're going to move on the agenda. From the Chief Business Official, Dave.
Thank you. Just a couple comments tonight. I shared with the board the 4 scenarios that were provided. Is everyone familiar with that? Wendy, would you bring that up? If you could, please. And so, talking with Dr. Silvers, we wanted to kind of get out in front of what we might be facing. And so in collaboration with my fellow CBOs, you know, kind of saying, what are some of the possible scenarios as of the information that we know now? So we said, okay, we'll do a scenario with the 2.29 COLA, which it was 3% prior to the governor's January budget proposal, but it was brought down to 2.29 with that January budget proposal. So that first column, you can see if we had a 2.29 column, which as of now is probably very unlikely, we'd have a small deficit of about $58,000. Next column over would be a flat funding. We're in the hole about $540,000. If we saw a reduction in LCFF revenues, or actually all revenues, we'd be about 1.4 in the hole. And then I don't know if you can see that to the very right, but it's closer to almost $2 million if we had a 5% reduction. Again, this is assuming flat ADA. You know, as we open up the school year, if we're back, hopefully we're back in, we're not sure. Our more families going to say, wow, I really enjoy that homeschooling, and I think I'm going to continue that program. So I think there is a risk that we could possibly see a decrease in ADA. And then these are real broad generalizations. You know, there's not any additional cost savings factored in. So for example, let's say we're not back in school in the fall. We're not going to have sub costs. We're not going to have other costs. So these are just real broad generalizations as of right now. And we're probably looking closer to a no COLA. You know, the state had about $20 billion in reserves. So hopefully they're going to, you know, use those reserves for flat funding, and then we'll really take a hit in the following year. But it's been pretty quiet in Sacramento. I don't think they know a lot of information. And what they're saying is that the May revise is going to be really don't hang your hat on it, because nothing's going to be known. The real budget is going to be released later, like in August, September. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. This is what other districts are thinking, preparing for, and it's dire news, but we got to share this with you now.
Thank you, Dave. It's important that we start planning for all the scenarios, and so we'll keep talking more about this. Thank you. Moving on from the Assistant Superintendent of Student Services.
Good evening. I want to focus a little bit on, again, the concept of gratitude. I want to share kind of two reports tonight in terms of how our Student Services Department's been doing. So as you know, we're mitigating the isolation and the loss kids are feeling and staff are feeling due to this change. And feelings of loss and coping with anxiety has been on the forefront of our care team's agenda. So both Julie Walker and Dr. Ingram are here tonight. I'm going to turn the baton to them to kind of talk to you a little bit more detail about what we've been doing since our last board meeting in terms of supporting families, staff, and students.
Hi, so we wanted to share a little bit with you just what we're doing in terms of Tier 1. So supports that every student and every family is receiving or just has access to, and then also our Tier 2 and Tier 3 supports with more specialized attention to students. I think Dr. Ring shared with you during the last meeting that we have a virtual folder of resources. So we've collaborated with the school psychologist to provide virtual workshops on dealing with anxiety, setting schedules for students at home. We've added a couple on self-care. We have one coming up on peer connection. So making sure that parents know how to make sure that, or how to create opportunities for students to continue to talk to each other and connect with each other. And Julie and Megan, one of our counselors at the middle school, are currently working on one for next week on grief, and not just grief in terms of death, but grief in terms of losing social connections, grief of a sense of safety. So all those things related to kind of the loss of being at school, or even adults' loss of being at work, and kind of a continuous routine. Another thing that we're working on is social emotional learning on a universal level. We have an online program that we recently gained access to. The middle school has already rolled it out, and they have over 500 students who have accessed it. So the counselors suggest lessons for students to complete each week. And what they're seeing is that students are completing those lessons, but also are exploring the program and accessing lessons that are relevant to them and some of the struggles that they're having. And so Julie and I have been working with the PBIS teams at the elementary schools to roll out similar lessons, but that are developmentally appropriate for our elementary schools. We started an Instagram account in hopes to better connect with some of our parents who maybe aren't reading the newsletters or just don't feel like a virtual folder is overwhelming. So just kind of quick snippets every couple of days on pointers or tips that might be useful for them. We're continuing to put our link to our virtual folder with elementary school and middle schools websites and newsletters to remind parents that they have access to that. Let's see, in terms of next steps, we want to reach out to parents who are less engaged. So each elementary school site is keeping a list of students who are not engaged or who teachers have not been able to access or who just kind of are not participating as much. And so we want to reach out to those families to see kind of what's going on, how we can support, how we can make the transition a little bit smoother. Then Julie's going to talk about another tier 1 that support our mental health fair that's been postponed.
Yeah, unfortunately, we had to postpone the mental health fair. Likely won't happen in person until next year. But we did want to still offer the supports and information that we were going to have for our families. So we've been working with the same participants that we're going to attend in person to either provide videos or website information or anything that they could offer, so we could share it in a virtual folder, kind of like our Google Drive, to share with families still. And so we're anticipating that it will still go out as scheduled along with the fair for Mental Health Awareness Month in May. And then for our tier 2 and tier 3 supports, we're continuing to provide our direct services. Monique, myself, Megan and Ted at the middle school, and our counseling interns. So at the elementary school level, before, we can call it pre-COVID, we were serving about 122 students. Currently, we're serving 47 students. At the middle school, Megan and Ted, their rules are a little bit different, but to note, we should say that they've met with 70 students who have been at risk academically, and they've completed 4 suicide ideation assessments prior to spring break during our dismissal. Along with our direct services and our collaboration with the counselors at the middle schools, we're also working on providing supports to our teachers as well, because we do know that they're unfortunately pretty impacted by virtual learning, and it's a very difficult time for everybody. And I think we're all trying to figure it out and learn as we go. So we really want to make sure that everybody's supported adequately so we can support our students and support our families. So we started something called Teacher Support Time, which is just kind of an online standing drop-in Zoom, totally optional, but it's a space for teachers to kind of share with one another, build a sense of community, share out successes and also challenges. And it's been really successful. Each week it's been growing in size, so that's terrific. And we're also going to be reaching out, and we are reaching out to individual teachers that may be especially struggling, just to check in on them. And then we're going to be continuing our internship model through this year. And in next year, we're actually looking, I've been reaching out to MFT programs, and we're looking to add MFT practicum students at the tier 3 level.
So as you can see, our care team has been very busy since our last meeting, and I'm very proud of the work they're doing in the collaboration with the middle school counselors and the psychologists as a team. I think the next brief report that we want to share is what our special education department's been doing. I know Kathy Waller's here. They're also a population of students that's often significantly impacted by school closures due to the nature of their disabilities, but we've done an amazing job working with our staff and our teachers. So I'll let Kathy report. Kathy Waller. I don't see her on.
I'm here. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
okay, sorry.
I was muted. I'm so sorry. Good evening, everybody. I did want to thank Mary really for all the support she's provided the department, guidance and support to me, as well as I know Allegra over on the Da Vinci side. I want to really commend our special ed staff, really the entire staff. They've been doing a wonderful job of reaching out to our families. And, you know, as in some situations, we've reached some families and others we have not, but we have a plan for that. We're going to be reaching out via personal letters to families just to try to get them engaged. And so we do have a plan for that. We are building and adding to a virtual folder of special ed resources that our staff can use. We met with the team today, as a matter of fact, and shared some really great resources that are going to help teachers, DIS providers, as well as our paraprofessionals as well. So we're going to be working on providing some staff development on our Wednesday time for our special ed team. I'm working with our BCBA to consider how we can continue to engage our paraprofessionals in supporting our teachers in virtual classrooms, as well as providing them with professional development that can support them. So that's something that we're working on. IEPs are continuing to happen and run virtually, which they have been successful, and most parents are engaged and participating fully in that process. And I just continue to work with Mary and the Southwest SELPA and any other state guidance that comes our way on how we can continue to serve our students appropriately. Thank you.
So thank you, Kathy. So lastly, I just have an announcement. It's kind of with mixed emotions tonight that I wanted to make the announcement that I'll be ending my contract with the Weisburn Unified School District effective June 30th. I've been honored to work in this capacity part-time with Weisburn and Da Vinci, but I've been offered and I've accepted another position. I'm not going too far, however. I am actually going to be working at Da Vinci Rise full-time as their executive director. So I just want to make that announcement and thank the board, superintendent, our cabinet, our principals for all the support. And I'll be moving on, but not very far away to continue the support to Weisburn Unified. So thank you for the opportunity. That's the end of my report.
Thank you, Mary. I also want to thank Monique, Julie, and Kathy. We really appreciate all the information. Keep up the great work. It's really nice to hear. Mary, you know, you're going to be missed, but I know it's a great opportunity for you. So, and you won't be far. So congratulations, and hope all goes well for you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to the agenda. Assistant Superintendent Educational Services.
Hi, good evening. I'm happy to report that Blake and I were able to meet this week with the Weisburn Education Foundation. They reached out to us proactively, looking for ways they could support us when we bring our students back. So, as well as during our distance learning time. So all sorts of ideas were coming out, and we're just really appreciative of their work and their forethought in supporting our district. So more on that later. Vicki Barber brought up the whole idea of online enrollment and ease of enrollment. I want you to know it's going really well with SchoolMint and that we've gone all online. This is, of course, everything from preschool through 8th grade, residents, new students, and really seamless. So we feel that all parents have access. If you go on any of our websites, you're going to see a banner. It's a single click to get into all the information you need about enrollment. So very happy with that. And we're seeing great outcomes. And we'll keep you posted on that going forward. But we are accepting students and inviting people into our district much earlier than we have previously. So that's all good as well. Finally, tonight, I really want to give you just a picture of how quickly our staff has moved really just on a dime from brick and mortar to distance learning. And so our principals are here tonight. I've asked them just to speak briefly to you about how it's working at their schools, and just a shout out to Quan Tra and the IT team and Sarah Nitsos and her team, who have just carried such a load this time, these last weeks, and making sure all of our students have laptops and hotspots and everything they could possibly need. So Albert, are you up first?
I am.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Harvick. Congratulations, Dr. Ring. On behalf of the principals, before I get started, I just really want to take a moment to recognize our teachers, students, and parents. They have been patient and amazing throughout this whole process, true partnerships throughout this entire thing. So prior to spring break, the message was that upon returning, our campuses would be closed, but the school would continue. And now that we're back, the message continues with the added notion that it's a new beginning. I say that because teachers are now settling into their new classrooms, and they now have student teachers, also known as parents. They're ensuring that that learning is continuing in different ways, communicating with parents in different ways, reaching out to their students and maintaining connections and however possible. What I will tell you that has not changed is teacher expectations. Teachers truly understand and believe that it is their imperative to get our students ready for the next grade, and they're not letting off. So they're taking learning new ways of delivering instruction serious. Hugo and Lisa are going to talk a little bit more about things that have happened, but they really are doing their best to maintain continuity and grow professionally in their delivery of distance learning. Go for it. Hugo, you're up. You're on mute.
I got too excited. I just want to congratulate Dr. Ring, so congratulations. Parents continue to be partners in the education of our students now more than ever. The partnership is strong. We surveyed our parents and wanted to know what has been working for them with this new normal of distant learning. Overall, the feedback has been very, very positive. Our teachers are raising the bar and doing the best they can every single day in communicating and collaborating with each other and with families. Moving forward, we will continue to work together and support our families. And with this, I'll pass it on to Lisa, who's going to share with you about our PD and our teacher survey.
Thank you, Hugo. And congratulations also, Dr. Ring. As we found out that the school closure period would be extended, we knew that we would have to give teachers an opportunity and time in a setting to be able to plan together for what that will look like in a continual way throughout the school year. So on the Wednesday prior to spring break, we had our first collaborative planning day for staff. So we let families know that their typically scheduled programming for students would be on hold that day. The live streaming and live sessions wouldn't take place, and teachers Zoomed together at grade levels and departments, and also as a whole staff at one point throughout the day to be able to collaborate and plan for the next week. So for this week and for next week. The response to that, because we did survey teachers at the end of the day, was extremely positive, that it was a format that they really felt worked. They appreciated the templates and the scheduling throughout the day, the pacing of the day. So it's something that they said they would appreciate moving forward. So we're going to continue that every other Wednesday. We'll have our next collaborative planning day next Wednesday, and then there will be 3 subsequent days from there out. So we were pleased that the teachers found it to be helpful, and we're going to continue with that same pattern moving forward.
And to piggyback off what Lisa said, collaboration is obviously key. It's one of the foundations at Dana, which goes hand in hand with personalized learning, which is obviously different in this distance learning, but our staff has done a great job of maintaining collaboration between the partnership of teachers. Grade levels are continuing to still meet and set their own meetings so that they are catching those kids that might slip through the cracks and making sure we are still addressing the whole child, even though we're doing it through Zoom and Loom and these creative digital platforms. That personalization piece, we just can't miss with our middle schoolers, and our teachers are doing a great job of doing that. Julie and Monique kind of touched on what the counselors are doing, but I did really want to also working quite well with me to make sure that our programs are continuing, and that's really important. And now my Zoom crashed.
All right. Thank you, principals. You know, and just to wrap up, we have, if you look at the district website or on any of the site websites, there's a district learning link, and you'll find there not only links about what's going on in the classrooms, but a parent resource list on what they can do with their child and instructions on how to use Zoom and all that sort of good stuff. We have, the WEF made a suggestion that we offer increased options for coding. So those have been added for parents to use at will. So we have a lot of different ideas going on, but they're all in one place, one click for our parents. So I want to thank the principals for all their hard work, and that's my report for tonight.
Thank you, Eileen, Alberto, Hugo, Lisa, and Kiana. Great job, appreciate it. Moving on from the superintendent.
Good evening. Good night. It's night now. We're moving into the night. It's been a long meeting. I actually had a PowerPoint. I'm going to probably spare the board the PowerPoint at this point, just touch on a few of the key sort of concepts that I wanted to get across during this meeting. I just wanted to sort of emphasize some key dates in terms of the response to the COVID crisis, just so people get an idea of how fast this had to happen. I mean, we were talking about call out days and preparation on the 25th of February. We ended up closing schools until April 14th on the 28th of February. And then on the 1st of April, just over a month later, we had to make a decision to close school for the duration of the 1920 school year at the recommendation of Superintendent Thurman and Governor Newsom. So it was a really quick turnaround. And during that time, you're dealing with negotiations collaboratively with our WFA partners and our CSEA partners. There's a lot of financial planning that goes into this. So you're dealing with immediate response and also a long-term outlook at our finances. You have teaching and learning impact, where we're changing more from a 3-week process that looks more like maintenance and connection with students to focus on teaching new material, intervention, remediation, special education services at a different level, and social emotional support and things like that. Looking at some next steps, I just want to say that financial, I appreciate Dave's report today. The financial analysis piece is going to be really important. What we're hearing out of the County Office of Education, what we're hearing out of Sacramento is frugality, being frugal and conservative about our approach to budgeting. We're hearing things like there's going to be a fictitious budget that's going to be passed in June, and then we're going to end up in a position to have to adjust to that in August or September, which is very difficult on a school district. We're looking at educational services, and I wish I had answers, but there's just lots of questions. What will the summer bring? What's next year going to look like? Are we going to still be distance learning? Is there going to be hybrid learning? And I think that every time the governor talks, there's more questions as to what we're going to do next year. So we're listening, we're collaborating, but again, there's a lot more questions, than answers. But what's come in our conversations with the Weisbrunn Ed Foundation, with our cabinet, is that there's two areas that we're looking at. One is response, which we're doing now and we'll continue to do, and then it's recovery. And what does that mean as students evolve, or as the situation evolves back into a school setting? How do we respond to the pandemic seamlessly and then recover as things hopefully transition back to more of the normal? So in so doing, in responding and looking at recovery, I just want to share some numbers. Right now, we're serving approximately 100 lunches each day to students that are coming by our schools. Right now, it's happening at Adena Middle School. We've had through about 310, now maybe up to 317 Chromebooks that have been distributed to families. And we've also been able to provide some support to families who may need online access. Less than 1% of our students are considered to have not been contacted or engaged, and we've put a full-on pressure to get those students online, to be able to communicate with them. And I want to share some numbers in terms of expenditures. So to date, bear with me. To date, we've purchased about 28 sanitizer or standing sanitizer stations that will be strategically placed around the district office and at sites or strategic locations at our school sites. We've purchased 360 foaming hand sanitizer bottles that will go in the classrooms, 360 bottles and containers of sanitizer wipes. We've purchased $80,000, 80,000 sets of poly gloves, 1,000 CN95 masks, respirator masks, 120 cloth masks, 190 boxes of nitrile gloves, and 1,000 paper masks, the surgical kind of masks. So we're definitely well prepared for the long term, at least for now, as students transition back to the school sites and our staff comes back. So just wanted to share that with you. I also have a lot of thank yous, but I'm going to do it more globally this time because I think throughout this particular presentation, there have been a lot of thanks to individuals. I just want to thank our teaching staff. I want to particularly thank WFA leadership, Liza Downer, Jennifer Flanders, and our CSEA leadership, Licia Galindo and Todd Huzvika, for their support during the negotiations process. Our Ed Services team, Special Education Student Services Department, and the often forgotten district office staff that generally work behind the scenes, but a lot of district office staff have been reporting to duty and been doing these tasks that keep payroll going and keep human resources moving. So for all of those folks, I just want to recognize them. Again, I mentioned teachers. We couldn't do this without teachers and our support staff. Very, very important. I want to thank them as well. But right now we're really standing on the shoulders of our maintenance and custodial staff. Talking about the front lines, these folks are on the front lines and sanitizing door handles and cleaning and disinfecting rooms, so that when our students come back, they're coming back to safe and sanitized locations. So I just want to send a special thank you to them. And we're all on this website today because of probably 30 hours of work in 2 days that Wendy has done. So I really want to extend a grateful thank you to Wendy for her management of this system. And I know Kwan's there in the background somewhere doing something. So Kwan, thank you as well to you and your team. Mr. Moore, that's it from me.
Thank you, Blake, very much. All right, moving on to the agenda. Minutes 5.1 to 5.4. Could I get a motion?
I'll move to approve 5.1 through 5.4.
I'll second.
All right, so I'm gonna say Roger motion and we'll give Joanne the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, action items, general. 6.1, supervised field work agreement between Weisburn and Brandon University. This is students in the Masters of Psych program. Do I have a motion?
I go motion, and just a quick question. I didn't see there was a cost impact. I'm assuming no cost impact on this.
There's no cost to the district for this item. These are our interns.
Okay.
All right, thank you. That was Neil's second. All right, calling the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, 2021 school calendars. This is ambitious.
It's a 2 year.
Would anyone care to motion?
Sure. A motion.
Joanne?
I'll second.
Thank you, Nelson. Any questions?
Just a thank you for the work here. And Blake, I think you were speaking, but you're mute.
I just wanted to share that this was a collaborative effort with the teaching staff, with union leadership. The idea was to get 2 years worth of calendars out so that we're always a year ahead. Obviously, this first year is much more ambitious, but moving forward, hopefully we'll always be a year ahead. We're behind now. It's April and we don't have a calendar out yet. So we're hoping that this approval will allow us to send the calendars out. But I'll also share that if you notice, there's only 2 calendars now. So we've shrunk what generally was a primary calendar and then a secondary 3 through 5 calendar, and then a middle school calendar now is combined into 2 calendars. So not only are we going out 2 years, but we also shrunk or lessened the number of calendars just to make it more user friendly and try and align the calendars as much as possible for our families. A couple dates are off, but we're really close. So lots of good things here.
Thank you, Blake. All right, I'd like to call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, 6.3 and 6.4 go together. Would anyone like to motion? This is the agreement with Londa Elementary.
I I think we wanted to pull these.
So there's I guess a motion to pull. Everybody in agreement?
Yes, I will
Yes.
second.
Pull both 6.3 and 6.4. Moving on to facilities, 7.1, approve use of the Garden Grove Unified School District piggyback.
I'll
A motion.
This is for modular, thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. So Neil was the first and Nelson the second. Any questions?
Roger, I think, was the first.
Was it Raj?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, 7.2, approve proposal from SKC Company, provide custom fabrication work to soon to be leased portable building for the full day preschool to be located at Del Air school site. Are we sure we're gonna need this, guys? With all the changes potentially coming?
I'm muting myself. We have just opened enrollment for this program and have filled nearly 2.5 classes already. So we're expecting this to be a pretty full program.
And you don't think the virus will affect this in any way?
It hasn't yet, and this actually, most of the registration opened during our closure. So, or just right, as this pandemic started evolving. So not thinking it will.
Okay, any questions from anyone else? All right.
I'll move to approve.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we'll give it to sorry, who was that? Nelson? or
Joanne. Joanne. Give it to Joanne.
All right, Joanne.
Doesn't matter.
All right.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
It's my beard.
8.1, this is a motion to additional authorization with law firm Atkinson, Adelson, and Rudd. Motion?
I think I would motion this with a change.
You'd like to amend it to only be how much?
50,000.
Okay, so motion to amend the increase 50,000. Can I get a second on that?
Second.
All right, thank you, Neil. Any questions? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, 8.2, ratify contract with Sierra Educational Consultant to provide professional development for guiding coalition members.
I will motion.
You have a second?
Cost is 3,000 from the Coatson grant. All right, any other questions? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
8.3, ratify contract with Rebecca Hamburg for nonprofit event management services. Cost is
5,000, right?
With 5,000.
Under the same budget we were paying before.
And I'll motion to approve.
I'll second.
okay. No questions then? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, consent. Are we doing these individually? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Classified confidential employment additional hours. I seem to have not.
Actually, Israel, you could do 9. You could do these as consent items as a bunch if you all chose to do
Yeah,
that.
I think it was the next section.
Yeah.
It's the next section, got it. Okay, so 9.1 to 9.5, a motion, please.
You have a motion.
Thank you.
I have a question, or can I second with a question?
Go ahead.
I just wanted Blake to take a moment to talk about Erica Corder, because I think this is a good news item.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, as we've discussed over the past couple years, communication has been key, and it's also been a bit of a gap in some cases for us. Erica Corder came highly recommended. We were doing sort of a search for consultants, and through that search, we came across Erica Corder, who runs a private consulting company. She's worked for Virginia Tech and other universities or higher education organizations. She's going to hopefully be, if the board takes action, will serve as our communications professional, at least for the next 3 to 5 months. And we're going to look at it in 3 areas. Number 1 is response to emergency issues and crises, to create a crisis management plan, an actual protocol, so that we could follow moving out. It obviously started with COVID, and we did use some of our services to get some of those messages out early. We also want to focus on proactive communication. This has come up in board conversations, at board meetings over the past couple of years, just to get the message out to the Wiseburn community and the greater community about the great things that we do in the district. And then taking a look at our branding and marketing platform and see if there's ways that we can help bolster our name in the community to help bolster enrollment or sustain and bolster our enrollment. So really excited to work with her, and it's been a nice start. That's it.
All right.
All right, so I'm going to call the question 9.1, 9.5. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. 10.1, accept retirement request, Dorothy Sweeney. Another wonderful teacher that unfortunately, or fortunately for her, she gets to retire.
I would like to pull this item.
I will second that.
Don't you wish we could? I wanted to do the same thing with Mr. Spivak.
Mr. President, take a roll call.
There's a motion and a second. Now, I would really like to thank Ms. Sweeney for a fantastic career and job that she's done for the Wiseburn Unified School District. Both Eric and Benny, 2 of my boys, have had her as their 5th grade teacher, and it was just fantastic. Really appreciate all her dedication and passion that she's taught all of our students in all those many years. So I would like to just say thank you to Dorothy. So thank you very much.
Absolutely.
You're here. You're here.
Thank you.
Bravo. Yes, Hugo, give her our best and let her know that we think the world of her and she will be missed.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And to the board, we will bring a resolution back to the board and do this more officially too.
Could I get an official motion, please?
I thought you were going to call the question.
A reluctant motion.
I will second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Accept resignations for Amanda Gregg and Courtney Huffman. Motion, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Neil. Second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any story here, Blake? Just leaving the
No.
or?
No, yeah, no story. They just resigned this year.
Okay. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Approve leave of absence for Nicole Jeffrey.
You have a motion.
You have a second.
Okay. She's having a baby, correct?
Anna?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Approve unpaid leave of absence 2020. So 2020-21. This is Miss Milius for 20% and Amanda Roberts for 20%. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I think that was 5. Approve leave of absence, Elizabeth Gonzalez. 50% leave of absence. Is there any motion here or a recommendation?
I think we need to motion and then vote, though.
So
It was my understanding we were no
are
longer.
you motioning to approve or to deny?
Motioning to deny.
Okay, do we have a second on that?
I'll second to deny.
Okay, any questions or comments? All right, all those in favor of denying, say aye.
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 Aye. All right. We will be adjourning to closed session in a moment. Upcoming dates and events. Next meeting is May 14th, so we have a full month. Although we are going to talk potentially about a special meeting, okay? Any other events or dates anybody wants to mention? Tiana, you're back.
Back. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened.
I like your background.
Yeah, very nice, very nice.
The lovely nursery.
All right, so if no other dates or announcements, we will adjourn to closed. I'd like to take 5 minutes, so we'll start up again at 8:40, folks. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Everyone, stay safe
Thank
and
you,
healthy.
everybody.
All right. Night.